In our 2024 lead, Donald Trump reacting this morning on, where else, Fox, to the news of Vice President Harris picking Minnesota Governor Tim Walz as her brand new running mate.
He's a very liberal man, and he's a shocking pick, and I'm thrilled. I could not be more thrilled. Nobody knew how radical left she was, but he's a smarter version of her, if you want to know the truth. He's probably about the same as Bernie Sanders. This is a ticket that would want this country to go communist immediately, if not sooner.
Okay, they're very progressive. They're not communists. But my panel joins me now to discuss. Alayna, you've been following the Trump campaign closely. This is baked in. You thought, is any surprises here as to his reaction?
I mean, of course, they were always going to try to frame, regardless of who Harris picked, as someone who was super progressive, who was super left. But I can tell you part of that we didn't hear from this morning, or that wasn't just played now, was him saying that, you know, he was really shocked that she didn't pick Shapiro. This is something that we've heard repeatedly. I've heard at least repeatedly in my conversations with Trump's advisors, which is they were very worried about Shapiro, obviously.
Because of Pennsylvania?
Yeah, he's very popular in Pennsylvania. I think the Trump team recognizes it is vital for them to win it. It is no guarantee. They're not, crazy confident that they're going to win it. And I think both campaigns, you hear this from Harris's team as well. They all see see Pennsylvania as being imperative to winning overall in November. But look, as for the way that they are trying to define Walz, there's a couple of reasons. One is that they've struggled for the last couple of weeks, ever since Biden ended his campaign and Harris became very quickly the presumptive Democratic nominee. They've been struggling how to define her. And when I talked to Trump's team about this in the last 24 hours, they said they kind of see Walz joining the ticket as a chance to try to define them together. And that's why they're jumping on this. Now, I do think that their argument that he's very progressive, that he's pushing the entire ticket to the left, will be hard to argue in some cases. I think if you look at what he did as governor, where he enshrined abortion rights into law, he protected rights for gender-affirming care, he passed universal gun background checks. Those are things that they're really going to be focusing on, I'm told, specifically the last 4 years. But as a congressman, he was actually a pretty moderate Democrat. He voted with Republicans on a number of things. He pushed to strengthen the border. He pushed to lower the national deficit. He was actually backed then by the NRA. And so I think they're still figuring out exactly which attacks will work best. But again, their biggest problem right now is which attacks work best on Harris. And that's why you heard Vance today really focus in both of his stops in Michigan and Wisconsin on going after Harris far more than he did go after her running mate.
Let me show you. CNN put together a list of the policies Walz has taken as governor, as Alayna just mentioned, passing a child state tax credit in Minnesota, making college tuition free for Minnesota families who make less than $80,000 a year, free breakfast, free lunch in public schools, signing an executive action that offers protections for people seeking trans health care in Minnesota. What do you make of the basic criticism from Donald Trump that Walz is basically as liberal, if not more liberal, than Bernie Sanders?
I think that it does not have any basis in fact. When we look at where Americans are, we know that college affordability is non-existent. We know that it's the fastest growing expenditure, second only to childcare. Americans want to be able to send their kids to school without having overwhelming debt that they're paying off for generations. We also know that what he's been able to do to reduce childcare expenses, to provide for affordable housing, to provide protections for those who have been overburdened by the criminal justice system, particularly black men who have been the targets of it consistently over the years. Those are things that the overwhelming majority of Americans are supportive of. So I think that it's a very hard thing to try to pigeonhole him in. And to what you said a moment ago, when he was actually in Congress, we saw Walz work across both sides of the aisle. We saw him be able to formulate relationships. We saw him be able to be that person who brought bipartisanship. And I don't think that that's going to be something that would be dissolved should he become vice president. I think that Americans are smarter than that the things that the right is trying to push him on are things that we've seen not only work in his state, but are honestly things that many Americans have been asking for at the national level, things that unfortunately have been blocked by Republicans.
So, but Jake, he voted with Republicans 14% of the time. We're not talking 40%, 35%. And I know there's some talk about him having some past membership with the NRA. I'm a big gun guy. No one in the gun community gives a care about the NRA. It was one thing if he would have been with Gun Owners of America or Firearms Policy Institute. The NRA is irrelevant for most real serious gun enthusiasts. As it pertains to him being a liberal, let's look at the policies. Amisha talked about him doing some things for African-American men. I'll cede that point. I was looking at a study from the University of Minnesota that talked about how his taxes at the local level and state level disproportionately impacts poor people, specifically people of color. I looked at migration patterns of people out of state. You can see if people are coming or going. There are more people leaving his state than coming to his state as a result of how expensive it is to live. So yes, his policies would not work for the average American person.